Hi, welcome to Frivolous Views. If this is your first time, you are very, very welcome. If you're a returner, thank you so much for coming back. I appreciate that. My name is Carlene. I'm your host, and it is my views that are, in fact, frivolous. So I'm so glad you're here. Um, Today I want to do a quick review of a book I recently read. That book is called The Price of Cookies. It's a novella in Flash, and it was written by Finnian Burnett. Now, full disclosure, Finnian Burnett is my friend. I have known Finnian Burnett for at least a decade now. Uh, I worked with them on the board of directors for the Golden Crown Literary Society for a number of years. Now, the Golden Crown Literary Society is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And it's a literary organization. Its focus is on sapphic literature, women loving women, and all that entails under that very large umbrella. Um, and like I said, we worked together for a number of years on the board, and we became very fast friends. And I will be having a chat with Finn posted soon, and so you'll get to experience all they have to say and our delightful conversation. But first, I want to talk about this book. Now, I was very excited about this book for a number of reasons. Like I said, I've known Finn for a number of years, and there was a little period of time where Finn kind of wasn't feeling it, kind of wasn't feeling the writing thing, and then things clicked for them, and wow, they went you know, balls to the wall, so to speak, pardon the expression, to just write some fantastic stuff. And so the price of cookies just came out very, very recently. And I was like, yeah, I need to take a look at this. I need to take a look at the stuff that Finn is excited about having written and published. So a novella in Flash, what does that mean? Well, in my chat in a few days, Finn will be able to give a much better explanation than I can. They're much more eloquent. But okay, so we know what a novella is. Okay, a lot of people say, well, it's a short novel. Yeah, basically, it's a shorter novel. It doesn't quite reach the threshold of being considered a novel. Um, in terms of like the Golden Crown Literary Society, the GCLS, that's 40,000 words or more is a novel. Um, what is Flash? Again, Finn will explain this better in our chat, but Flash, they're not short stories, but they're short stories. It's basically like 1,000 words or fewer, basically is what it is. So they're very short stories, but they're not quite what is it, microfiction? And again, Finn will explain this better because I don't know this stuff. I'm just well, they know it. But these are 1,000 words or fewer stories. And so it's a novella in Flash. Okay, but if they're individual stories, wouldn't that be an anthology or a collection? Not necessarily, no. Because while there are 26 stories, Flash stories in this, or chapters, if you will, and each one is its own individual story, with a main character, main little through line, main plot, main whatever. Um, it's not like an anthology or collection in that they're all completely separate. What's fascinating about the price of cookies is that they're all connected by this town. They're all inhabitants of this particular town. and they're all connected to each other, but not connected to each other. So, in other words, you don't have to read one person's story in order to understand another person's story, which is nice. However, wow, when you read all of them and then get to that end, it's this collective wow that comes out of it, which I think is really kind of fascinating, and it's visceral. Um, the fascinating thing about the price of cookies is that it's not really about cookies. I mean, it's a through line, it is, but if you're expecting to see, you know, stories or chapters called like, macadamia nut chocolate chip or kolachki, that's not it. Um, but it does provide a nice through line. There's this wonderful, wonderful connection, though, with all of these tales. They're all interwoven. It's this collection of these connected, linked stories that kind of connect us all to those stories. It hits us on a visceral level. It hits us on an emotional level. It looks into. I mean, there are stories in here about love and about grief and about wanting and about loss and just all these beautiful universal human emotions and human ways of being. um they're woven together in such a way that just all of these common threads just make sense. They just make sense. And in a way, it is kind of like having, forgive me, Finn, it is kind of like having this wonderful tray of assorted cookies. It really is. And they're all delicious and they all evoke something. I think of holidays when I was younger, and my grandmother would, and I'm sticking with the cookies, even though it's not about cookies, but my grandmother would make the holiday cookies, and then she'd put together a tray that would be put out when people were over. And it would just be all kinds of cookies. There would be, kolachki, and there'd be biscotti, and there'd be, chocolate chip, and there'd be oatmeal and the list went on and on. My grandmother had an entire closet. I'm looking at the closet my grandmother had filled with tins of cookies. And so then years and years later, when I have a particular type of cookie, it because my cousins have continued on traditions of making different cookies. So when I have, that biscotti or what have you, it evokes an emotion. It evokes, this feeling within me, this memory. And in most cases, those are positive. Every now and then it triggers and it happens, but that's okay. Um, and that's what these stories kind of did for me. It was this wonderful tray of assorted stories that brought something to me, that made me feel, that made me think, that triggered memory, whether both good and bad. Um, but whether good or bad, those memories were in some way cathartic, which I think is a fabulous thing. And so this collection of stories about basically a town of people who are on their own and collectively getting through, just making it through alone with each other, um, in obvious ways, in subtle ways. Um, and it's this absolutely beautiful thing. Now, one of the things that I found really just beautiful and wonderful about this book too is that Finnian Burnett is a poet. She's not writing poetry, but she's writing in a poetic way. Um, her use of language is so skilled. It's You've got 1,000 words to tell the story, so you better pick those words very well. And they do that. They pick the words so well, so precisely. Um, they're evocative and they really get to the heart of things. And so Finnean Burnett is a poet. I will say it until the day I die. Finnean Burnett is a poet. So I feel like this has gone all over the place, and it kind of has. But again, it's because I'm trying not to spoil things. I don't like to spoil things. And I don't want to spoil stories within this. I also don't want to spoil experience. So here's my recommendation. First of all, get the book. Link is down below. Get the book. It's available in ebook, it's available in paperback. And then read it. Now, this is one of those things that you can sit down and say, okay, page 1, and then stay until page end. You can do that. I did it because I didn't want to put it down, because it's not like, oh, I need to see what happens to the main character in the next chapter, because once a chapter or a story is done, it's done. That's that character's story. It's done. And the next chapter or story is somebody else's story. So there's not that sense of, oh, I can't leave it on that cliffhanger. I need to find out what happens to so and so. But there's also that sense of, who are we going to learn about next? Whose story is next? What's going to happen in the next story? And so you want that. And so, yeah, I read it in one sitting. But what's nice about it is that if you have that busy kind of schedule where you can just say, okay, I've got time to get in a couple stories, and then I'm going to get to the next couple when I have time later, and you can get through it that way. I recommend sitting down and reading. There are only 26 stories. It's 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 not like reading, War and Peace. So you don't need to set aside 3 days. You can set aside a day, set aside a few hours. And if you're like me, you will want to go back and read again. Not just like, oh, I got to from page 1 to page end, and now I'm going to go back to page 1. But you may get to the end of one of the stories and go, I need to read that again, because it hits you in some way. It finds a way to get under your skin, and you say, I need to read that again. Um, or simply because the language is so beautiful. Because, like I said, Vin Burnett is a poet. Um, so there's that. Now, here's what's really nice too, is that, okay, you get to page end, and then you hear from Finn. There's a note from Finn and some acknowledgments, but then there's bonus materials. So now there are 8 additional flash stories from Finnian Burnett that are not connected in any way to the price of cookies. They are 8 standalone stories. And each one is like fabulous. I mean, there's fun, there's heartache, there's things are touching, things it's really awesome to kind of get this additional set of experiences now that apart from the price of cookies, which is fantastic. Now you have these 8 additional stories that are just Finn saying, "Here, I like you, have some more," which is really fascinating. It's really fantastic. So I apologize. It was a little bit kind of all over the place. I get that. But I was doing my best to not spoil story, to not spoil experience. But one of the things I can say about the price of cookies right off the bat is that you will feel all the feels. You will experience all the experiences. You will grieve loss. You will experience healing. You will become fulfilled in love. All of these emotions will find their way to you, however you experience them, however they fit in your world. Because ultimately, the price of cookies is a universal experience, as are cookies. And so, experience some humanity and read The Price of Cookies, a novella in Flash by Finnian Burnett. You won't be sorry that you did. Thank you so very much for being with me today. I appreciate it. Please like this video. Please subscribe to the channel. Please throw some comments down below. Help out the algorithms. If you're so inclined, please share this video. But I do hope that you enjoyed being with me today. And thank you so much.